All right, jumping back on the overtime segment of the show, talking about legal news impacting the NFL with the G Money. Biggest story of the week comes down to Tyreek Hill and the detention that happened by Miami-Dade's finest outside of the stadium on his way. It's all over the news. It's all over the media. Couple press conferences. Tyreek gets detained and then cited, not charged. Big difference we're going to talk about in a second. Two things. One, failure to wear a seatbelt. Number two, careless driving. So, G, when you saw the video, things that have come out on Twitter, all over the news outlets, what's your initial reaction when it comes to the legal impact or kind of an analysis? And I'll give you a background. Garrett used to be a prosecutor out of the Miami-Dade prosecutor's office. So I was also a prosecutor in Hillsborough County. So we've got a little bit of experience. I think we can talk a little bit about credibility about these things that we've seen. So give me your initial standpoint.
Oh, when I saw the video for the first time, you know, it's just a bad look, I think, for the Miami-Dade Police Department and for those individual police officers that were there on the scene. Just think it's completely tone deaf on their part that they would not have the communication skills to deal with that kind of situation. That just know where you are, know your time and place. Like, you're on duty in front of the stadium. They knew that it was Tyreek Hill when they pulled him over. You hear them comment on the video, we've got a Dolphins football player here. And you would think that they would do everything possible to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, you're going to work. Let's get you to the stadium. Listen, don't drive like that again out here. If he was doing anything wrong, like, de-escalate the situation. That should be, you know, at the top of a police officer's list, especially in a situation like this where there's really no crime that's been committed. It's a civil infraction. They weren't chasing him through Broward and Dade County because he's running away from the cops, and he's not driving 150 miles an hour speeding down the turnpike, where it rises to that level of that's the kind of force and that's the way that you're going to treat this person, regardless of who it is. And so I just think it was just bad communication, bad look by the Miami-Dade Police Department.
It's ugly stuff. There's no doubt about it. I agree.
It's uncalled for and just really horrifying.
I agree. When I look at it from kind of the prosecutor, the legal standpoint, what I look at is first is to say, did they even have a reason? Should they even been there? Well, under the law, state of Florida talks about a couple things as to how you can get pulled over. One, civil infraction, i.e. you broke a traffic law. Number two, reasonable suspicion that you're in the commission of committing a criminal act. Here, I think it's important to note we're talking about civil infraction, traffic infraction. Think about, hey, I ran a stop sign, I was speeding. That's the only basis at that point for pulling them over. Now, we were able to grab the tickets off the clerk site and basically got cited for two things. One, careless driving. Two, not wearing a seatbelt. But we do know this, no information in the actual citation itself. So for careless driving, which is literally just a civil infraction, it talks about the legal definition of a person operating a vehicle on the streets or highways within the state shall drive the same in a careful and prudent manner. So there's a lot of discretion to the officer when it goes there. Now, what I don't care for is Tyreek. Did he do anything wrong? No, as opposed to maybe careless. But opinion we always give, or I always give, an officer does come to the window. A lot of people get confused. Are they allowed to ask me to roll the window down? They are. Are they allowed to detain me? And the answer is they are, as long as it's within the scope of whatever they're arresting and or investigation, i.e. here, a civil traffic infraction. Justified, excessive, yes, yes, and yes, across the board.
And just to show, I think, that the wrong attitude that the officers had is even when the other additional players pull over because they see what's happening, they pull their car over, I feel like the police were aggressively approaching them and asking them, demanding them to do things and ordering barking orders at them, barking orders at Tyreek. They're putting him on the ground. They're telling him, get surgery on your ears. You don't hear too good. They're cussing at him. Yes, you know, you can detain someone with reasonable suspicion that a crime's being committed. Okay, we have to figure this out.
That's right.
We might be in danger.
Officer
Something's
safety,
going on here. But
be able to look at it. We can't tell if there's a gun. We get to secure a scene. The law talks about for a reasonable time we're allowed to detain you. But to see him get handcuffed, put on hot concrete, knowing, like you said, tone deaf, that at the point that the door was risen, the officers knew that they weren't in fear. They could easily observe the vehicle, that there was no gun. You could easily tell that he's on the phone with his sports agent, Drew Rosenhaus. What do you live on Mars if you don't know this? The justifiability of causing a bigger scene. You could hear the provocation in the officer's voice. You could hear the aggression. Even when they had him detained and locked up, the force that they used to put him on his knees, to me, that's an internal problem. That's an investigation on who these officers are, and can they keep their jobs as peace officers.
The way that they acted did not meet the moment. The circumstances were just not there.
Yeah.
This wasn't a huge fight. It wasn't a crime, actual, like, real crime that had been committed.
This is Scotty Scheffler part 2. This is not knowing your surroundings, but your point, communication. If this officer, and I think it was the second one that approached, if he wasn't even there, I question if it goes this far, because he kind of instigated. If the first one, and I get it, Tariq wasn't rolling down his window. That's a bad look for him. Hey man, absolutely, it's not good, it's ugly, but if you can comply and try to get rid of the situation as quickly as possible, things probably don't lead one on top of the other.
Well, and it's not Tyreek Hill's job or the driver's job to de-escalate the situation.
Exactly.
People aren't used to being pulled over by the police most of the time, so they're trying to do the right
which
thing.
Which side's supposed to be trained for that?
If you are pulled over by the police, you might have a certain amount of fear involved just because of things like this happening. So,
100%.
Right, who's trained in that situation? The officer are trained, or should be trained in that. And so I think that, yes, they probably, one or two or more of those police officers probably should be fired for using excessive force and just using poor judgment. I mean,
so we've had cases excessive force. We've had teeth broken out. We've had cases as trial lawyers representing victims of civil rights violations. A lot of people are saying, hey, what can be done? At this, I think Tariq's handling it perfectly or beautifully, which is awareness. When you bring what they would call a 1983 action, which is a federal statute, which talks about, hey, look, I am filing a lawsuit for damages. Here, thank goodness, no bodily injury. Here, I think the detainment was so short-lived, in my personal opinion, better do what Tariq's doing to say, hey, we want an internal investigation, like the Dolphins said. We want this addressed with the officers. I don't think it gives rise to damages where you're actually suing, the city of Miami and or, the police force.
Yeah, very hard to get above that immunity statute that protects a lot of the government organizations, including police. You really have to prove a lot that this officer went way outside the scope and that was excessive. And while it's there, yeah, you still would need some type of injury really to complete your lawsuit against them, at least from our perspective as injury attorneys. So one thing I did want to mention too, and this may play into the discipline that these officers receive, is that, I don't know if you heard in the video, but I remember hearing while they have Tyreek on the ground initially, the officer says, you are under arrest. And that's not, that wasn't true. That wasn't a legal system.
I can arrest you if that's what you want, because Tariq's saying, hey, I do whatever. But a couple of statements that jump off is, I'm going to break this glass window down if you don't get out. Oh, it's too late for that. I gave you the opportunity. Oh, you should have had surgery on your ears and you should have listened. Oh, kicking its feet out from underneath and put them down. It's a horrible look, especially with everything that everybody deals with in the community. It does nothing for the Miami-Dade. And I just think if somebody would have paused and somebody would have just talked reasonably, and I get it, there's cars passing, there's nervousness, but if somebody would have said, hey, excuse me, Mr. Hill, I understand the situation, I understand that you're concerned, but I'm only pulling you over for careless driving. It's a $175 ticket. Well, can we address this? Can you roll your window down for me? Why go to the other degree?
And Tyreek is on the video saying, give me my ticket and let me go.
Right.
I'm late for work.
Right. Even if you don't like the way he said it, even if you think he's a jerk, why not kill him with kindness? Why not say, hey, Mr. Hill, I understand it's not that easy. If you could give me a moment, I've got to write it up. And then you reverse, and put it on their side, as opposed to saying, I've had enough. To me, that knee-jerk reaction where they're so over-aggressive, I think goes a long way that Miami-Dade's going to have to stay involved in this thing.
I think it's great, the support that Tyreek got, not only from his teammates, but from his coach, and then also the Miami Dolphins organization put out a statement supporting Tyreek Hill and going back to what he said as well. What if I wasn't Tyreek Hill? You know, what we might not ever hear about this situation that this happened, that someone was treated so unfairly and so unjustly in this situation. So it kind of brings to light and opens up people's eyes, and let's just be aware of these things.
The difference between the letter of the law, they have the right to stop, they have the right to detain, but ultimately it's an ugly scene. Hey, and that's legal formation. That's the Overtime with Rob and Garrett. It's the G Money reporting on it. We appreciate your support online, and we look forward to bringing you week 3.